Tired of that same old breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Same old tasting scrambled eggs, burger, that dinner steak, ribs, or pork chops. Why not add a little bit of spice or just a touch of heat to make the difference? Change that scrambled egg with a little bit of Johnny Fabulous's John Cena SR's $1 Million Jalapeno Hot Sauce. Great on burgers, steaks, chops, and those barbecued ribs.
Hi, it's John from Under the Table Hot Sauce. I'm here with my friend, the star of the show, Jimmy Farrow.
Yeah, what's up, JB?
Nah, nothing.
It's been a hot summer, and for all your barbecue needs, you can go to underthetablehotsauce.com. 13 unique flavors to choose from, created and bottled in a Long Island kitchen. Underthetablehotsauce.com. Let's go chow, JB.
Let's do it.
All the flavor, twice the burn.
To hang on the negative, but Billy Jack Haynes, we covered in the last show, Jimmy, unfortunately has been arrested for the murder of his wife. His wife was ill with dementia, a severe case, and from what we understand from the headlines that Billy might have or took her life via gunshot. John, I don't know if you knew Billy at all or you ran across him within your career, especially on the pro wrestling side. Do you know anything about Billy Jack Haynes?
No, I know where he started. I've heard, various stories from various people about his temper, about how he was to deal with. But when I never had the opportunity to meet him one-on-one. But when I listen to this story and I sit back and I say to myself, if it in fact is true, and none of us know what the story is yet, the fact of the matter is that a person lost their life. Dementia is a very sad disease. I just had a friend lose his mother to that. She'd call up screaming, "They're holding me hostage, get me out of here, they're starving me to death." And then he'd go back in the morning and say, "Well, what do you mean I called you last night? I don't even have your telephone number." And then I see somebody else who's saying, "I didn't talk to my granddaughter last night." It's a very serious thing. And I pray to God someday that we find a cure for these things, because I'm sure we have cures, but it just doesn't profit anybody to bring those cures of cancer and dementia and everything else forward. We can find a cure for a COVID disease, or at least contain it, but we can't find a cure for the common cold or cancer. Nothing makes sense. But for a man to reach the point, normally what would happen under those circumstances, and I'm just, believe me, surmising. I feel very sorry it happened. Nobody understands the emotion he was going through. But usually those end in double suicides. One mate cannot live without the other. It's that type of situation. What caused it? Why it was caused? I don't know anything other than what I hear or read, but it seems there's conflicting stories as to what had happened, why it happened. Some people say it's a loving relationship. Some people say it wasn't a loving relationship. I guess we're going to talk about another scandal with the WWE. But the thing is, I always say, there's three sides to every story. There's yours, there's mine, and there's the truth. And what we're after now is getting the truth. What really happened? What forced this man to supposedly, and we do a lot of crazy things for love. And when you love a person that much and you can't stand to see that person suffer or go through what dementia causes, and it's cruel to watch somebody decay with that disease. Maybe that's why people do what they do. Hopefully we'll get the story. Hopefully we'll understand But for myself, I just don't know. Like I say, I've heard Dutch talk about him. I've heard other people speak about him. He seemed to have a short fuse. He was quick and easy on the draw, fast and so who knows? Only God knows. Only He has the answer to what happened and why it happened. Will it be believable? Only God knows that too. If it was a case of I didn't want to watch them suffer anymore, well, I don't know how you justify that. I don't know what I would do in that case. I really don't. It's difficult enough to walk the path without taking somebody's life that you love so dearly. And that's why I say, when you read most of these things, elderly couples doing this type of situation, it usually ends in one or the other or both being demised. So I don't know the answer to that one. I really don't. I don't know if you've got any more feedback on that, if either of you know any more. I think it's a bizarre story. I really do. And to sit back and try to digest that in my mind, I'm going, well, I read a lot about him. I know when he started wrestling. I know what he did. He was a great performer, but he had backstage issues, had issues with some of the people, according to Dutch Mantel, and a few of the other stars. Were those issues, and I believe, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he was in the hospital. He had just suffered a fall, and he signed himself out, from what I understand, because he couldn't be without his wife. And went home, and that's when this situation started. The thing that confuses me on this issue, and again, I know very little about it, is why it took 2 hours to get a man out of a house. If it was a case of mercy killing, is that a good word to use? I guess that's the only word I can think of.
That's what Jimmy and I were discussing. It could be a case of, again, we don't want to speculate, but in my mind, we met Billy twice. I spoke to Billy, I don't know, a handful of times on the telephone, just in general conversation. It could be a case of mercy killing, John. I mean, me and Jimmy we were discussing that earlier.
Well, if that's the case, and again, let you and I, somebody has to be the devil's advocate, so I'll be the devil's advocate, I guess.
Sure.
So if you perform that function and you remove that person, when the police come to your house, why does it take 2 hours before you let somebody in, or 2 hours before you surrender? That's the one thing that I can't in my mind figure out. I mean, it's done. You did it out of love. And I'm sorry I did it, but I couldn't watch her suffer anymore. Here, take me. Take me. Come in and take me. Just make sure you take care of my wife and allow me to do what I need to do to give her final resting place. These are things that kind of sit in my mind that it's kind of like sifting sand. There's some big lumps in that sifter that won't go through. And those are one of the things that sit in the back of my mind and say 2 hours before he finally came out or allowed people in. There's something illogical about that.
Well,
definitely illogical.
I'll let Jimmy speak to this, but I will say that in the few times that we've met Billy and the few times I spoke to him, there's certainly, John, when you speak to someone, you could feel like something's not exactly right. There's an uncomfortableness that you get from somebody. That's what I got off of Billy. Seemed like a very nice guy, don't get me wrong, but there was something off. Jimmy, do you want to add on to that?
Well, since we're exploring the possibility that this was possibly a mercy killing, the only thing I can think of is that when he took her life, but maybe he wasn't ready to leave her. And for some reason, the 2 hours, we don't know what went on in that house when those 2 hours were going on other than come out, as they were telling him to come out. Who knows? He might have been talking to her. Look, we're exploring this possibility, so I'm thinking to myself, maybe he was talking to her, how sorry he was that he had to watch this. and watch her fall apart, and he didn't want to do this, or he wanted to tell her about things that they experienced in their time together that he remembered. It's his business, man. I don't know what happened in there, but if we're exploring the possibility that this was a mercy killing, I might not be ready to leave. I might have some more things I want to say to her before they take me away, because you know what your fate's going to be. Once you leave that house, you won't be at the funeral because of the way it happened. You won't see her again, and yeah, I bet you he was also scared. I mean, there's a lot of things. People think they can just make a cut, dry blanket statement on where he was at. Anybody with a real feeling, caring soul knows how people usually can process things, and I tend to think that he might have needed some time before he left that house, because he knew what he did was going to result in him never seeing her again one way or the other. He wasn't going to be at the funeral, judging the circumstances, and perhaps he just needed to say a few more things to her. I don't know. We don't know.
Well done by both of you guys on this subject.